Dustin.
What's up, John? So, this shock that you guys are using, that shock's not the shock that would fit on my bike, is it?
I'm sorry, what?
Like, this shock wouldn't fit on my motorcycle, would it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the one that goes on the, like, the stalker, right?
This one probably would fit on your bike.
Would it?
Yep.
Okay. It's quite a bit different than what normal...
It is different. It's a much larger body, and the internals have some different features as far as the way the piston is designed.
Okay.
And the valves themselves are also larger. They use larger shims, and the setting bank is nothing like what you would have on your bike.
Okay.
Overall, it's just a higher precision part, and the idea is to try to keep the damping integrity as consistent as possible.
Damping integrity. So this I guess this is just because you guys are working on trying to get the last 10.
And you don't have one of these on your bike, hydraulic preload jack. Or sorry, a pneumatic preload.
Pneumatic preload.
Yeah.
No, I sure don't.
No, they're nice.
So what is the pneumatic preload jack? What does that mean?
So there's a piston inside here that's sealed up against a reservoir, and when you apply pressure on it, it shoves that piston out.
Okay.
And then you have this ring that's on a 1 millimeter pitch thread. So each turn that you change one way or the other way, every single turn is worth a millimeter. And because it's a positive stop and it's not hydraulic, you get an absolute number for your preload.
Okay. That's awesome, John. Thanks for the info, man.
Okay.
It sure does look cool too. I mean, you know, important stuff it's got to look cool too, right?
Yeah.
You're all yeah. Alright, so we got a cabinet that says forks on it, John. And I've noticed that the forks on the Superbike are pretty trick. They're they're Öhlins forks. I don't know what model they are, but I've noticed that the bottom of the fork is kind of machined out. And I've always been curious about that. And what about the Öhlins fork makes it so different, and why do you think they've machined out that area on the bottom of the fork?
So,
uh-oh, he's opening the drawer of forks.
So this is our fork drawer.
Everybody needs one of those, right?
Yeah, you can never have too many, right?
Yeah, oh well.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know how many you're gonna go through. Plus, gives us an opportunity, because on these front forks, this front fork is called a 2530, an FGK or an FG 2530. There's a part number.
FG 2530. Okay.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah. So like, see what I was saying? Like, it's all machined out in here, and I'd like to figure out like why they do that and why it works so well. I mean, it looks like there's almost nothing there.
They did some analysis, and when they came up with the stresses that the fork bottom is actually put under, they realized that they didn't actually need all the mass of the material around the fork bottom or the brake mounts themselves, because the forces are only going through the brake mount in a certain way. And then the stresses that are being applied on the fork bottom from turning and so on, they were able to calculate how much of that material they could remove and still have more than enough to accommodate any sort of forces that the tire was going to achieve. You also notice that this fork has very little engagement from the tube, the bottom of the tube, down to this area here where it's threaded in. So that's something else that's new, and that was also designed into this particular fork, because there's also a stem that goes up inside this inner tube.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it's got like a receiver. So the inner tube goes down over top of the receiver, and it's threaded on the outside, on the inside of the inner tube and the outside of the fork bottom.
Okay.
It has a stub that goes up in there, and it provides a lot of support. So you're not actually just working on this small little area. You have a much larger surface area that provides the support for the bottom of the fork.
Okay.
So these forks are pretty cool in that you only have one particular damping function per leg.
Okay.
So on this leg, which is this compression leg, and then the other side, the right side, is the rebound leg.
Oh, okay.
It allows you to split the damping up and achieve a much greater efficiency for the damping. And by efficiency, what I mean is that the damping is able to recover obstacles or irregularities that it will encounter much quicker because it's not having to do two functions at one time.
Right.
And that actually allows you to reduce the overall damping that the front fork has to achieve, because you don't have to try to compensate for one of the damping functions bleeding into the other, because that's what happens when you have two dampings in one leg.
Okay. Well, I also noticed that you know, in Superbikes of years past, the fork tubes themselves, I remember them being a lot thicker. Am I crazy to think that?
This particular fork is a little bit bigger than what you used to remember seeing, because we started out way back in the 90s. We had a 42 millimeter fork.
Okay.
And then that evolved into a 46 millimeter fork for the Superbikes, because they were considerably heavier than the 500s, and they thought that they needed to have a much stronger, more robust front fork. And then eventually they kind of worked their way back down to a 42, but they had some pretty special materials inside on both the outer tube and on the inner tube.
Okay.
And then they found that, yeah, the Superbikes actually do want to have a fairly stout front fork, and they were able to achieve similar weight with a 46 millimeter fork that they could get with a 42, because they could go much thinner on the materials that they used. And also you have the swept area on the bushing is actually allowing for less stiction, because you have the pressure is applied, the forces are applied over a bigger area, and so that actually reduces stiction and friction.
Stiction and friction, that's a whole nother podcast, right?
You can spend another 15-20 minutes on all of that too.
Yeah? Well, you know what, John? Thank you for that, buddy.
No worries.
Appreciate it.